Cape Fear, North Carolina, is a coastal plain and tidewater region of the state, situated near the city of Wilmington. Cape Fear River is a 192-mile-long blackwater river in eastern North Carolina. It flows into the Atlantic Ocean near Cape Fear, which is one reason for the river's name. You may remember the 1991 film Cape Fear, starring Robert De Niro. This edge-of-your-seat thriller gave us a close-up encounter with the sometimes powerful waters of the roiling river as it barrels toward the Atlantic. The Cape Fear region, clinging to the edge of the state, is home to about 275,000 people. It was discovered in 1524 by French explorer Giovanni de Verrazzano. The region's history, as is true of most southern destinations, is rich and deep, dotted with mystery and intrigue. In June of 1585, a ship named Tiger was headed for Roanoke Island, bordered by the Outer Banks. The ship almost wrecked due to waterways, inlets, and landforms that appeared and disappeared with the powerful storms and tides characteristic of this region. You may remember this phenomenon from our episode about the lost colony of Roanoke that aired 2 seasons ago. The Tiger ship incident was not the only time that there's been a close encounter with Cape Fear. Throughout history, even as far back as the early 1500s, explorers referred to the headlands as the Cape of Fear, probably due to the dangers associated with sailing near it. We've learned by now that southern cities each have cultures of their own, tapestries woven with threads of truth, legend, and mystique. Cape Fear is no different, and as is true of so many cities located near bodies of water, specters and apparitions play lead roles in Cape Fear's ethos. Tonight, I'm going to share 2 stories with you, each with its own haunted history, each married to the sea and to the land that gives way to it. Gather close, my friends, as tonight we turn our attention to the coast of North Carolina. It's beautiful, and it beckons vacationers almost year-round to enjoy its sandy beaches, coastal breezes, and the foamy waves of the Atlantic Ocean. But beauty, we've learned, is often mirrored by a dark side, one of danger, of mystery, and even death. We'll explore 2 legends of Cape Fear, both firmly rooted in actual history, and both so intriguing that we must ask the question, where does the factual history end, and where does folklore grasp the story and drag it out to sea? Take a moment to get settled here with me tonight on my front porch, as we share a cool drink and talk about things that seem to come alive in the quiet black of the night. And perhaps they do. Let's turn on the light, just in case. The following podcast contains material that may be disturbing. Listener discretion is advised. The Barrier Islands and coast of North Carolina are breathtakingly beautiful and at the same time alarmingly treacherous. The powerful storms that whip up the coast batter these low-lying areas with fierce winds, hurricanes, and storm surges that quite literally change the landscape. Waterways and estuaries can disappear, then reappear elsewhere along the coast with wind, waves, erosion, and rip currents battering and chewing at the fragile, fickle sands. As you might imagine, residents who live in Cape Fear and in the Barrier Islands are drawn by the natural beauty of the area. but homes have been leveled by the wicked winds of hurricanes that seem to be drawn to this coast just as the people who love it so. Ships have been swallowed whole by churning seas, crews lost forever to the chill and the deep of the ocean. Vessels have been bashed against rocks or thrown off course because the shoreline and waterways were erased and redrawn by the elements. And ships have sailed on calm seas with gentle breezes, only to vanish without explanation or any trace of the ship or her crew. Souls lost, ghost ship whose crews had mysteriously vanished, often with meals and place settings left undisturbed, no damage evident. Souls searching for a way home. Souls trapped in the chaos and utter fear of certain death, its face the black, merciless wall of water, birth of a hurricane or a storm surge. For centuries, and even today, beachgoers report strange sightings, unexplained lights far off on the horizon, ethereal ships seeming to send signals from centuries ago to a fort or a lighthouse that no longer signals back. They see ships that are there one minute, gone the next, and they encounter captains and crews that lost their lives to the mistress of the sea in a faraway era. Let's first turn our attention to the ghost ship of Caswell. In the dead of night on October 28, 1864, a nimble three-masted schooner with a hull painted as black as the night on which it sailed slipped out of the mouth of Cape Fear River under cover of velvet darkness. She was the Mercy Ellen, a Confederate blockade runner that had already beaten the Union fleet 5 times, and she was commanded by one of the best-known mariners on the coast, Captain Elias Dosher of Brunswick County. She glided silently past the guns of Fort Caswell, a Confederate fort constructed in 1836, designed to guard the mouth of the Cape Fear River against Union forces. It's been said that neither Union soldiers nor sailors ever attempted to attack Fort Caswell because it was so strongly fortified. Not a single Civil War battle was ever fought there. The Mercy Ellen cleared the batteries with no difficulty, and she was never seen again. No signal, no wreckage, no debris, not a whisper of what had become of her and her crew. Now, Captain Dosher was carrying medicinal cargo and, some said, contraband coin, gold, possibly foreign. Some opined that treachery befell the Mercy Ellen. Some said fate had already written the story of the ship's demise long before the captain plotted her course. But that same night, fishermen from nearby Smith Island reported seeing lights that blinked once from the southern horizon, much too low and too fleeting to be stars. The Mercy Ellen, her crew of 7, and her mysterious captain joined the long ledger of ships swallowed perhaps by the blockade, but certainly by the deep black water of the sea. Did tragedy strike the Mercy Ellen? Did the Union blockade intercept her and take command of the agile vessel and arrest her crew? Or did another fate so sinister that it defies all logic devour the Mercy Ellen that fateful night? Captain Elias Dosher came from one of Brunswick County's oldest families, and the Dosher name is still well respected in Southport today. He was a blockade runner of uncommon skill, and if the older stories are to be believed, something more complicated. An informant who worked both sides of the blockade. His descendant, local historian Clara Dosher, stated it clearly in 1957, and I'm quoting, "There's talk he made a deal he shouldn't have. trading cargo for gold and double-crossing both sides. The ship vanished the same night he disappeared. And Dosher's own handwritten journal, donated to the Maritime Museum, contains this final entry, quoting, "They warned me not to take her to sea, not with that cargo, but I needed the gold. I saw the lighthouse vanish behind us, then nothing but the black horizon." A century and a half later, Dosher, his crew, and the Mercy Ellen still sailed the dark horizon between Fort Caswell and the Oak Island Lighthouse at Cape Fear. You see, locals and tourists alike still see and recognize the old runner's signal. 2 flashes of a light, then a pause, then one more flash. When this signal is flashed out to sea in the dark of the night, a single flash of light answers from far out on the horizon, and that answering flash is too low to be from the lighthouse. Those who have seen this sequence report that once the sequence of flashes is complete, a thick mist rolls in off the water. Locals warn tourists not to test this phenomenon, but someone always does. And every time, the ship answers. Now, I know what you may be thinking. This sounds like so many other children's ghost stories whispered in the night between nervous giggles and gasps. But don't take my word for it. Listen to these actual newspaper accounts of the ghost ship phenomenon recorded for more than 100 years. On October 17, 1923, the Southport Chronicle reported that fisherman Henry Beck, unaware of the legend of the Mercy Ellen, flicked his lantern 3 times near the Caswell shore. Out of the mist, a ghostly 3-masted schooner appeared from nowhere and without a sound, and then it vanished after a single answering flash. The Wilmington Coastal Observer reported on June 8, 1957, that a Fort Caswell caretaker flashed his spotlight, just goofing off, the man explained. But when a faint beam returned from south of the Oak Island Lighthouse, the caretaker was shaken, saying that the beam seemed to have come from another world. The Brunswick Beacon reported on October 29, 1983, that during the haunted Southport walking tour, a group flashed the runner signal using an old railway lantern from the Fort Caswell Museum. A single flash answered from the waterline beyond the battery, leaving behind, quote, a wispy mist and the smell of brine and burnt rope. The State Port Pilot reported on October 14, 2006, that 3 Southport High School students tried the signal with a cell phone flashlight while they huddled around a beach bonfire. One blink answered, and then sails, with moonlight as a backdrop, appeared far offshore. When the reporter checked later that week, he saw that the Coast Guard logged no vessels in the area. There have been several more sightings since this last, and it's interesting to note that most of the sightings occur in October, always in the same stretch of water, and always at dusk or just after nightfall. We must ask, then, whether the blockade runner Mercy Ellen answers only when summoned, or does she wait forever, never truly leaving? Now, let's turn our attention to a woman who walks the shoreline of Bald Head Island, a barrier island that sits directly at the mouth of the Cape Fear River. Theodosia Burr Alston was an accomplished woman, tutored in Latin, Greek, and mathematics by her father, Vice President Aaron Burr. She was hostess of his household at the age of 14 and the wife of a South Carolina governor at 18. But by the winter of 1812, she was also a woman drowning in grief. You see, in 1804, her father had killed his fierce political rival, Alexander Hamilton, in a duel. He stood trial for treason, and his political future over, fled to Europe. At about the same time, Theodosia's 10-year-old son died of malaria. When Aaron Burr finally returned to New York in 1812, Theodosia resolved to go to her father. Her husband, newly sworn in as governor and commanding the state militia in a country at war, could not leave South Carolina. So on December 31st, 1812, she boarded the schooner Patriot at Georgetown. The vessel was a fast former privateer, her guns hidden below decks, her name painted over, and she sailed north into the open sea. Tragically, the Patriot and everyone aboard were never heard from again. The disappearance of the schooner and all who had been aboard on that fateful voyage became one of early America's greatest mysteries. A British fleet logbook records a ferocious storm off Cape Hatteras on January 2nd and 3rd, 1813. But the sea gave up no wreckage, and darker stories began to emerge from the deep. Deathbed confessions of pirates surfaced for decades, claiming the Patriot was taken and everyone aboard forced overboard. And along these banks, people whispered of the wreckers, land pirates who worked the shoals on stormy nights. Their method of piracy was simple and diabolical. They would hang a lantern from a donkey's neck and walk it slowly along the beach. To a storm-blind ship offshore, the bobbing light looked like a vessel safely at anchor. Ships would steer for the false harbor, hit the shoals, and then would be swarmed and robbed, with no survivors left behind to tell the tale. The legend here holds that the Patriot ran aground off Smith Island, today's Bald Head Island, that the wreckers murdered all crew and passengers, and that among the plunder carried ashore was a portrait of a dark-eyed young woman, a gift Theodosia was bringing north for her father. In 1869, more than 50 years after that fateful voyage, a physician treating an elderly woman at Nag's Head in Dare County noticed an unusually fine oil portrait on her cottage wall. Her first husband, she said, had taken it from a wrecked ship during the War of 1812. That painting, which today is known as the famous Nag's Head portrait, hangs today at Yale University's Lewis Walpole Library. Burr family members later swore the portrait bore Theodosia's face. For 40 years after the Patriot vanished, the mystery persisted. Beginning around 1850, a succession of dying sailors and condemned criminals began confessing their dark crimes. One account came from the mouth of the pirate Dominique Yeo. His men had found the Patriot without her masts off Hatteras Island, murdered the crew, and forced the lady aboard to walk the plank. In that telling, she stepped onto the board with unearthly calm, descended into the sea with graceful composure, and was gone. Another confession, attributed to a pirate named Frank Burdick in 1848, added a detail that made the story impossible to forget. The pirates left her clothing untouched, and with it they left a fine portrait, which wreckers later carried ashore from the deserted ship. Stranger stories still drifted back from farther shores. Early settlers on the Texas Gulf Coast told of a Karankawa chief who wore a gold locket engraved with the name Theodosia. He said he had pulled a young white woman chained by the ankle from a wreck at the mouth of the San Bernard River, and before she died in his arms, she told him she was the daughter of a great chief of the white men who was misunderstood by his people. And in Alexandria, Virginia, in the St. Paul's Episcopal Church section of the town cemetery, some still point to the 1816 grave of the nameless female stranger, and they wonder who really lies beneath it. In 1913, an elderly Norfolk man recalled that early in 1813, the body of a young woman with every indication of refinement had washed ashore at Cape Charles and been buried quietly on a nearby farm. It seems Theodosia Burr is everywhere and nowhere. This notion brings us to what residents and visitors have reported on Bald Head Island for 2 centuries. If you were to walk the beach at night with the moon reflecting brightly on the waves, you might very well see a young woman walking toward you. She'd be wearing a long dress from another era, and you might think she was too finely dressed for a midnight stroll on the sand. But as she got closer, you'd notice she's transparent, that she gave off a pale glow. You'd see that she left no footprints in the sand. People have reported seeing her walk slowly, scanning the tide line, searching, the story goes, for the lost portrait that never reached her father. Others have seen her running, pursued by 3 other specters, the men who killed her, reliving the chase down the Strand. The woman has never spoken. Is it possible that she still exists in the year 1813, and that somewhere beyond the dark horizon, her father still waits for her? Well, there you have 2 of many stories of hauntings and strange phenomenon that hover in and around Cape Fear, North Carolina. These tales have elements that seem to fascinate us all: Civil War history, European heritage, murder, and of course, the mystery and pull that go hand in hand with water, and with the sea in particular. I'm Carol Townsend, veteran newspaper journalist and 6-time award-winning author. You can find me on social media and check out my website at caroltownsend.com. As always, thanks for listening, and if you're enjoying these tales of Southern history and lore, I hope you'll tell your friends. Subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Play, iHeart, and anywhere you listen. The following resources were used to compile these stories for you this evening: the website hauntedcapefear.com, Wilmington Magazine, and website coastalreview.org.